Picture this. You get a letter in the mail, completely out of the blue, telling you that you've just inherited an entire estate. Sounds like the start of a great novel, right? Well, today, we're diving into a true story that is honestly stranger than fiction. We're heading back to 1891 to unravel a bizarre mystery centering around an ordinary piece of property that was hiding an absolutely impossible secret right there in the dirt. If you're the kind of person who loves a good historical puzzle, where everyday people suddenly find themselves caught up in something extraordinary, you are going to want to stick around for this one. Let's get into it.
So imagine you're 27-year-old Sylvia Hartley. You take a long, bumpy carriage ride down a quiet, dusty country lane, and you finally arrive at Caldwell House. This is the property you've just inherited. But when you step out and look at the place, you realize the house has been almost completely swallowed alive by wildly overgrown roses. I mean, they have tunneled over the iron gates, they've crept up the stone walls, and they've turned the entire estate into this living, breathing, tangled thicket. It's incredibly beautiful, sure, but it is also completely overwhelming. You literally can't even see the front door.
To really wrap our heads around why this was so overwhelming for Sylvia, we have to look at exactly who she was. The year is 1891, and we are in rural Devon, England. Now, Sylvia is a practical, no-nonsense manuscript editor from London. She's a city girl. She lives her life by the pen. She deals in cold hard facts, strict deadlines, and publishing schedules. She knows absolutely nothing about plants or soil or pruning shears. So, standing there in this massive, untamed jungle of a garden, she is entirely out of her element. It's like dropping a librarian in the middle of the Amazon.
And that brings us to our first really big, glaring question. 94. That was the age of Leonard Ashford when he passed away. Leonard was Sylvia's great-uncle and the previous owner of Caldwell House. But here is the kicker, the part that just doesn't make sense. Sylvia had never even met the man, never. They hadn't shared a single conversation, they hadn't even exchanged a Christmas card. Yet for some reason, this 94-year-old man chose to leave his entire estate, the house, the wild garden, all his belongings, to a great niece he didn't know, who was living a completely different life in London. You have to ask yourself, why her?
Well, Sylvia is determined to figure that out. As she starts carefully exploring the overgrown property, she spots something that just doesn't fit. While the rest of the garden is this chaotic, tangled mess of bright pinks and deep reds just choking each other out, there's one single plant sitting against the north wall that is completely different. It's a rose bush, but it looks incredibly old, with thick silver-gray bark, and it's perfectly contained, blooming with these delicate, pale cream flowers. But the most striking thing is the smell. It doesn't smell sweet or powdery like a regular rose. It smells deep, heavy, and resinous, almost like ancient polished wood. It stands out like a sore thumb. While she's closely inspecting this strange, ancient-looking plant, Sylvia spots something tucked away. Shoved deep into the mortar of the stone wall, right behind the thickest part of the rosebush, is a tiny, folded piece of yellowed paper. She pulls it out, and written in Leonard's incredibly neat handwriting is a strict, undeniable rule. The north rose is not to be moved. It was here before the house. And the note is dated July 18th, 1851. That happens to be the exact year Caldwell House was built, which means this strange little plant is decades older than the 40-year-old estate itself. Now, Sylvia is hooked. Faced with a puzzle like this, she leans on the one thing she knows how to do better than anyone else. She decides she's going to treat this wild garden in this dusty old house exactly like a messy manuscript that needs to be fact-checked. She sets up a methodical, three-step plan. First, she's going to scour every single estate record left behind in Leonard's study. Second, she's going to head into the village and interview the locals. And finally, she's going to track down a botanical expert to tell her exactly what is growing in her yard. Step 1 pays off almost immediately. Deep inside Leonard's personal study, Sylvia finds his gardening notebook. It's incredibly detailed, spanning over 32 years of careful notes. But there's an entry from 1852 that literally makes her stop in her tracks. Leonard writes that the estate's stone wall wasn't just built near the rose to protect it. The masons were instructed to physically work the foundation's mortar around the already established living canes of the plant. Think about that for a second. The entire estate was purposefully built to accommodate this one specific flower.
So, the physical evidence clearly points to something incredibly important about this plant. Now it's time for step 2. Sylvia heads down into the local village to see what kind of history she can dig up. She ends up tracking down an older woman named Harriet Pellow. Harriet is important because her family used to own the old original farmhouse that stood on the land long before Leonard ever built Caldwell House. Sylvia figures if anyone alive knows how long that strange cream rose has been growing in that exact patch of dirt, it's going to be Harriet.
And boy, does Harriet have a story. She sits Sylvia down and shares this chilling local legend that her own grandmother had passed down to her. The villagers didn't just see it as a flower, they actually called it the Penhallow rose. According to Harriet's family history, the plant was never grown from a seed, and it sure wasn't bought at some local nursery. It was given to the family by a mysterious stranger a very, very long time ago, and the stranger left them with one strict warning: never ever move it. Why? Because, as Harriet tells a wide-eyed Sylvia, the rose remembers things. Now, to a practical city editor, a phrase like "the rose remembers things" sounds like total nonsense. Except, it suddenly clicks with something deeply unsettling that Sylvia has been experiencing since the day she arrived. Every single night she sleeps in Caldwell House, she has these unbelievably vivid dreams. But they don't feel like chaotic, random dreams. They feel incredibly structured, real, like memories. She keeps dreaming about a stone-flagged farmhouse kitchen she has never seen, and walking through formal garden layouts that simply don't exist anymore. She realizes with a chill, she is dreaming the distant past of the exact ground she is sleeping on.
Okay, so the mystery is completely consuming her at this point, and right when she needs it most, she catches a lucky break. Remember step 3 of her plan? Enter Daniel Voss. He's a botanical historian who specifically travels around studying old historical estates. When he arrives, Sylvia immediately takes him straight to the north wall to show him the pale cream rose. And Daniel is absolutely stunned. He recognizes it, but not from any modern gardening catalog he's ever seen, no. He recognizes it from a late 14th century medicinal manuscript that's kept locked away in a cathedral library.
Daniel gently examines the thick, silver bark of the plant, and he gives Sylvia a name. They are looking at Rosa memorialata. It's an entirely unclassified, ancient medicinal plant that late medieval texts referred to simply as the Rose of Memory. Daniel looks closely at the canes and confirms that the way it has grown and hardened is consistent with a plant that is vastly older than any officially recorded rose in all of England. This thing hasn't just been sitting in the soil for decades, it has been surviving there for centuries. And the details Daniel shares from his translation of that 14th century Latin manuscript, they are mind-blowing. The ancient text specifically describes pale cream flowers with exactly 5 petals and notes that it emits a complex, resinous scent. Exactly what Sylvia smelled. But here is the absolute craziest part. The manuscript states that the plant doesn't distinguish between the memory of a human sitting near it and the memory of the earth it's planted in. It literally gives back the memory of the place itself. Suddenly, Sylvia's vivid dreams of the old, vanished farmhouse kitchen make perfect, terrifying sense. Armed with this unbelievable truth, Sylvia rushes back into the study and finally uncovers a hidden box of letters that blows the whole case wide open. This is where the human side of the story really breaks your heart. She reads letters written by a woman named Alina, who owned the farm way back in the early 1800s. Alina had written to Leonard, passing down the strict, sacred instruction to never move the rose. And Leonard's letters in return reveal his lifelong fierce dedication to honoring her rule. He literally built his entire house, his entire life, around quietly protecting this one ancient plant. When you lay it all out, you see this beautiful, secret history unfold. This wasn't just Leonard's little secret project. It was a quiet, centuries-long chain of keepers, starting from some unknown man before 1814, to Elelena, down to Leonard Ashford, and now to Sylvia Hartley. Each person was handpicked by the last to act as a silent guardian. And suddenly, Sylvia understands exactly why her great-uncle chose her. He didn't pick her at random. He picked her because he knew her personality. He knew she was practical, thorough, and dedicated. He knew she would be the perfect person to protect the rose. So there she is, a city girl from London, standing in front of a living piece of ancient history. For generations, an unbroken rule had been whispered down the line. Do not move it. Do not take cuttings. Let it grow exactly where it is. Faced with this incredible, heavy legacy, Sylvia finally makes her choice. She goes back into the house, picks up her pen, and writes a letter to her employer in London asking for an indefinite leave. She decides to honor the instruction, stay right there in Devon, and officially take her place in the secret chain of keepers.
Sylvia ended up finding a strange sort of comfort in the companionable memories of all the people who had lived and loved on her land long before she ever arrived. It really makes you pause and think about the places we live today, doesn't it? Think about the things that happened right where you're sitting, before you ever moved in, and what invisible things we might leave behind for the next person. I'll leave you with this. If the ground beneath you held centuries of forgotten memories, would you really want to remember them? YouTube metadata. Titles. 1. I inherited a house with an impossible secret in the garden. 2. The 30-year-old mystery of the rose that remembers. 3. She found a hidden note inside her wall. True mystery. Description. What happens when you inherit an estate from a relative you've never met, only to discover it hides an ancient, impossible secret in its soil? In 1891, practical London editor Sylvia Hartley arrived at Caldwell House in rural Devon, England, fully expecting to sell the overgrown property. Instead, she stumbled into a centuries-old mystery. In this incredible true story-inspired narrative, we dive deep into the puzzle of the Rose of Memory, a medieval plant that holds on to the past of the ground it grows in. From strange hidden notes tucked inside stone walls to eerie local folklore and late-night dreams of forgotten farmhouse kitchens, join us as we unravel the secret chain of keepers who spent their entire lives protecting one miraculous flower. If you love immersive storytelling, historical puzzles, and mysteries that make you think deeply about the places we live, you won't want to miss this one. Pull up a chair, get comfortable, and let's explore the mystery of Caldwell House. Tags: mystery storytelling, true historical mystery, unsolved mysteries, Caldwell House mystery, immersive storytelling, relaxing mystery stories, strange inheritance stories, unexplained phenomena, historical true stories, Stillwater Storyhouse. Hashtags: mystery story, historical mystery, immersive storytelling, unexplained, storytime. Thumbnail text ideas. Do not move it. The house built around a secret. The rose that remembers, hidden in the walls. Why did he leave it to her?